Your body is producing cortisol right now. That's normal. But if you're dealing with chronic stress, inconsistent sleep, or ongoing anxiety, your cortisol may be staying elevated longer than your system is designed to handle. And that matters. Persistently elevated cortisol isn't just a stress feeling. Research consistently links it to increased abdominal fat, impaired immune function, disrupted sleep architecture, higher cardiovascular risk, and accelerated cognitive decline. So today, I want to walk you through 9 interventions that repeatedly show measurable reductions in cortisol levels across clinical trials and meta-analyses. We'll start with the lifestyle factors with the strongest evidence, move into social and behavioral influences that most people underestimate, and finish with targeted supplements that can enhance but never replace the fundamentals. Before we get into the strategies, it's important to understand what cortisol actually does. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, released by the adrenal glands in response to physical or psychological stress. And acutely, cortisol is adaptive. It mobilizes glucose, sharpens attention, and prepares your body to respond effectively. The problem isn't cortisol itself, it's chronically elevated cortisol. When this hormone remains high for extended periods, it shifts from being protective to being disruptive. We see blood sugar dysregulation. We see increases in inflammatory markers. We see suppression of thyroid function. We even see changes in gut barrier integrity. Our goal is not to eliminate cortisol. That wouldn't be healthy. Our goal is to restore a normal rhythm, a healthy morning peak and a gradual decline into the evening. With that framework, let's move into the interventions. 1. Prioritize high-quality sleep 7 to 9 hours. Sleep is one of the most powerful regulators of cortisol, and the relationship is strongly bidirectional. Poor sleep elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol disrupts sleep. A 2024 study demonstrated that a single night of sleep restriction, sleeping just 4 hours, raised cortisol levels by 37 to 45% and delayed cortisol recovery the following day. Mechanistically, insufficient sleep dysregulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Instead of the normal pattern where cortisol peaks in the morning and tapers through the day, the curve flattens. Evening cortisol rises, and that makes falling asleep even harder. So here's the practical approach. Aim for 7 to 9 hours consistently. Keep your sleep and wake time stable even on weekends. Make your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. Reduce blue light exposure at least 1 hour before bed. And the good news, cortisol patterns respond quickly. 2 nights of adequate sleep can begin restoring a healthier rhythm. You don't need months to see changes, just consistency. 2. Engage in regular moderate exercise. Exercise creates a temporary rise in cortisol while you're moving, but regular physical activity lowers baseline cortisol and improves your overall stress response. A meta-analysis of 10 studies found significant reductions in cortisol among people who exercised regularly, along with improved sleep, creating a reinforcing cycle. Why this works? Exercise enhances clearance of cortisol from the bloodstream, it improves insulin sensitivity, it supports mitochondrial function, and it increases parasympathetic or rest and digest activation. But intensity matters. Very high intensity training, especially without adequate recovery, can keep cortisol elevated chronically. Here's the evidence-based guideline. 150 to 200 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week. Include 2 to 3 sessions of resistance training. Moderate intensity means breathing harder but still able to speak. Prioritize rest and recovery, especially if you incorporate high-intensity intervals. If you're waking up exhausted or your performance is declining, that may indicate overtraining. Dial back intensity rather than pushing through. 3. Practice meditation or mindfulness 10 to 20 minutes daily. Meditation is one of the most consistently validated interventions for lowering cortisol. A meta-analysis of 45 studies found significant cortisol reductions across multiple forms of meditation. One study observing medical students during exams showed a 20% decrease in cortisol after 4 days of practice. The mechanism is straightforward. Meditation activates the prefrontal cortex that reduces amygdala-driven stress signaling. The nervous system shifts from sympathetic or fight or flight to parasympathetic or rest and digest. Focused attention meditation, simply directing attention to the breath and gently returning when the mind wanders, has particularly strong effects. Implementation: start with 10 minutes daily, a quiet environment, comfortable posture, closed eyes. Use guided meditations if you're new. Consistency matters more than duration. People often notice subjective improvements within 1 to 2 weeks. Laboratory measures shift about 4 weeks. 4. Spend time in nature, 15 to 30 minutes. Nature exposure, a practice widely studied in Japan as Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing, is associated with meaningful reductions in cortisol. Across a systematic review of 22 studies and a meta-analysis of 8 high-quality trials, nature exposure consistently outperformed around urban environments for cortisol reduction. Why it works? Natural settings activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Tree-derived phytoncides may influence stress pathways. The visual complexity of nature provides restorative, not depleting cognitive engagement. Noise and environmental stressors are typically lower in green spaces. You don't need hours outdoors. Even 15 minutes in a green environment can produce measurable effects. Aim for 15 to 30 minutes, 3 times per week, minimal phonius. Allow your attention to rest. Combining nature exposure with light walking or mindfulness amplifies the effect. 5. Optimize gut health. The gut-brain axis plays a surprisingly direct role in cortisol regulation. A 2024 meta-analysis of 46 studies found significant cortisol reductions with probiotic supplementation, especially single-strain formulations. Here's the connection. About 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in the gut. Gut microbes communicate with the brain through the vagus nerve. Dysbiosis and inflammation activate the HPA axis, driving cortisol up. So an unhealthy gut can signal stress even when your environment isn't stressful. Practical steps. Consume 1 to 4 servings of low-sugar fermented foods daily. Sauerkraut, kimchi, plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, fermented vegetables. Emphasize prebiotic fiber, vegetables, legumes, fruits, whole grains. Aim for 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. Avoid unnecessary antibiotic use. If required, focus on rebuilding gut diversity afterwards. Food should be your foundation. Supplements can support but never replace it. Cultivate meaningful social connections. Social connection is a biological buffer against cortisol. Randomized trials show that individuals who receive social support before a stressor exhibit significantly lower cortisol responses. One study found that emotional closeness predicted a 17% reduction in hair cortisol levels, an indicator of long-term stress load. Mechanistically, supportive social interaction increases oxytocin. Oxytocin directly counteracts cortisol. Social isolation, in contrast, signals threat to the brain, raising cortisol. Action steps. Prioritize quality over quantity. Deep relationships matter most. Make time for face-to-face interactions when possible. Reconnect with one person you've drifted from. Consider joining a community group or class. Practice presence. Put the phone away, listen actively, share openly. These aren't not soft intervention. They produce measurable biological effects. Now let's talk about supplement intervention. Supplements are supportive tools, not substitutes for sleep, physical activity, nutrition, or social connection. If the fundamentals aren't in place, supplements will have limited impact. But once you have a solid foundation, these 3 options have meaningful research behind them. 7. Ashwagandha, 125 to 600 milligrams daily. Ashwagandha is one of the most well-studied adaptogens for cortisol modulation. Across 9 randomized controlled trials involving 558 participants, ashwagandha consistently lowered cortisol and improved perceived stress. Mechanisms include modulation of the HPA axis, supportive GABAergic signaling, and potential improvement in sleep quality. Implementation: 125 to 600 milligrams daily, usually taken in divided doses, standardized to 5 to 10% with an odds. Expect full effects after 30 to 90 days. Important note: it can interact with thyroid medications, sedatives, and immunosuppressant. If you have autoimmune conditions or on medication, consult a clinician. Mild GI discomfort can occur. Taking with food helps. Start on the lower end, around 300 milligrams, and adjust based on response. 8. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. Omega-3s play a significant role in stress regulation, largely through anti-inflammatory pathways. Multiple studies show that EPA and DHA supplementation reduces stress reactivity and supports more flexible cortisol responses. Why this works? Omega-3s reduce chronic inflammation, a driver of elevated cortisol. They integrate into neuronal membranes, supporting healthy signaling. DHA is a structural component of the brain. Deficiency impairs stress regulation. Implementation: aim for 1 to 2 grams of EPA plus DHA per day from fatty fish like salmon, sardines, or mackerel, or supplements. Choose molecularly distilled products tested for purity. Take with meals containing fat for better absorption. Because cell membrane turnover takes time, effects build over weeks to months. If you're on anticoagulants, consult your clinician before supplementation. 9. L-theanine, 200 milligrams. L-theanine, an amino acid found in green tea, promotes calm, focused alertness without sedation. In controlled studies, individuals taking L-theanine show reduced cortisol responses to acute stressors. Mechanisms include increased alpha brainwave activity, modulation of GABA and dopamine, and reduced subjective stress. Implementation: 200 milligrams about 30 to 60 minutes before a stressful event. Can also be taken daily. Green tea naturally contains L-theanine, l-theanine, but you'd need several cups for the same dose. Many people use a 2-to-1 l-theanine to caffeine combination, 200 milligrams of l-theanine plus 100 milligrams of caffeine for smoother focus. It is generally very well tolerated. You have 9 interventions, but don't try to adopt all of them at once. That approach rarely works. Instead, start with 2 or 3 based on your biggest gaps. Build consistency over several weeks. Add additional strategies once the first ones feel automatic. For most people, sleep, regular movement, meditation, or nature exposure form the strongest foundation. Once those are consistent, add gut supportive nutrition and social connection work. Supplements come last. Timeline: subjective improvements 2 to 4 weeks. Measurable cortisol changes 4 to 8 weeks. Restoration after long-term stress, months, not days. Progress over perfection. These adaptations take time. Chronic cortisol elevation isn't inevitable. Your body has a remarkable capacity to recalibrate when you support it with the right behaviors. The combination of quality sleep, regular moderate exercise, and consistent mindfulness practice is especially powerful. When you layer in nature exposure, meaningful social connection, and supportive nutrition, you create a comprehensive environment for restoring healthy cortisol rhythms. If you need an additional edge, ashwagandha, omega-3s, and l-theanine each have solid evidence behind them. Start with 1 or 2 steps today. Commit for 30 days, track how you feel, and remember, your stress response system is inherently adaptable. With the right inputs, it will move back towards balance.